I'm Lois Cook. I'm wide receiver, number 18.
I'm Kristen Jones. I'm a right tackle on the offensive line.
I'm Lois Cook. I'm wide receiver, number 18.
I'm Kristen Jones. I'm a right tackle on the offensive line, number 78.
So I'll start with Lois. What inspired you guys to start playing football?
Oh my goodness. So for me, I grew up playing with my brother. So I was the one girl in the neighborhood who was, hanging out with all the boys, and we played everything. We did bike tag, soccer, you name it. But one day we played football, and it was the biggest adrenaline rush for me. It was like a challenge. I was able to push and pull and jump on people and not get in trouble for it. So I had so much fun. The guys were impressed that I was kind of like hanging in there with them. And it was never really a thing that I was the only girl. They just kind of, included me in the group. And so it stuck with me. So when I got to, so how I got into actually playing, I was so obsessed with the sport. I wanted to play in high school. But the coach told me straight up, no, I was not going to be on the roster. He did let me practice with the guys, and I did that for a little bit, but my best friend was a cheerleader at the time. So I was like, you know what, forget this. I'm gonna be a cheerleader too. And then I just became obsessed with the sport from then on. So I carried it around campus when I went to college in Georgia. And the security guard there on campus saw me from time and time again, throwing the ball around campus. And he talked to me, and he ended up being the head coach of the women's team there. So that's how I ended up joining.
Well, I never knew that there was even a possibility for me to play. I never even considered it. My high school actually didn't even have a football team. My college's football team was disassembled midway through my matriculation. So I always just envisioned myself as a spectator. And it wasn't until one of my best friends and sorority sisters was actually asked to try out when she was actually working out at the same field that the DC Divas were practicing. And she was like, I don't want to do it by myself. And I was like, that sounds awesome. I definitely would love to try. I didn't even know that would be a possibility. But I've always been a fan of football. I love the competitiveness. I love the roughness. And I just feel like it's a super intense sport that really requires so much collaboration that it can't be, some teams it's one person that carries the team. You can't have that in football. And I like that about it the most.
So that's actually a good point. That brings me, how important is it to, for everyone to be on the same page to succeed?
That's everything, right? Because, I'm a receiver. So typically I'm lined up next to another receiver. So if I'm running the wrong route, or if I'm running and we don't know what each other are doing, then we might run into each other. We might mess up the play that way. We've got to always be on the same page. The QB has to know what we're doing at all times, right? And if we don't know that the QB is scrambling or in trouble, then, now we can't help the situation. But it's definitely, you have to have that chemistry, the cohesion. You have to be able to work together. It is literally the team sport.
I think for the O-line, that's like one of the most collaborative units on the field. We have to be able to get off the ball at the same time. You have to be able to know exactly who's blocking who. Some of those, blocks are double teams. And we have to do that in order to make anything happen on the field. So, if we don't all move as one, there might be a hole. We might put the quarterback in danger. We might put our ball handlers in danger. We have to be able to give the quarterback enough time to get the ball to the wide receivers. So, we really have to make sure, because if we're off, most of the time, that means that the entire team is off, right? And the last thing we want is for our QB to get hurt, for any of the ball, the ball hole handlers to be hit. So we definitely at all times have to be working as a unit, communicating, and just making sure that we're one at all times.
Just to piggyback, that's probably the most important piece to it. This is a collision sport. So we are, everything you're doing, you're 100 yards per hour, like you're 100%, you're all in, and if you don't know what the next person is doing, or if there are some breaks in communication or breakdown in whatever the play is, somebody could get hurt, and nobody wants that. So you have to be disciplined. And that is the most important thing, is to be able to work together as a unit.
For sure.
What are some of the things you've learned on the field, either practice or whatever, that you could take back to, regular life, if you will, your day jobs?
I would say, as far as, what we were just speaking about, the collaboration, I think that playing football has made me a lot more disciplined and patient, in the corporate field. I have to take into account a lot of people's opinions all the time, whether it be your coaches or your teammates, the other units, the staff. You have to, take into account everybody's feelings. You have to make sure that you're not being offensive, because at the end of the day, we need to work together, right? The only time we all win is if we all win. So I think I've taken that back to my work life, and it's enabled me to be able to, be more understanding of people's natures, and, just how they're likely to communicate with me and how I can react different. And, as rough as football might seem, it requires a lot of delicacy. So
yeah, I have to say, like, this is probably my favorite thing about football, is that there's so much more to football than just football. You're developing yourself as a character. Things like leadership. Like for me, I've always been a very shy person. Growing up, I didn't like the spotlight. I didn't like to be, in front of, I didn't like attention on me. But as I'm a Christian as well, I'm the captain on the team, and I've been placed in positions or situations where it requires leadership, and I've been able to step up and, develop that kind of a skill. Also confidence, right? Like just being confident on the field. You have to have confidence. You can't step out there and not know what you're doing, or act like you don't know what you're doing. And I think that translates as well, when you are in the workplace. If you are timid or you're not confident in what you're doing, you're going to get walked over, or you might not succeed, or you might not be able to accomplish what your goals are. So, and that's another thing, goals, right? When you are playing football, we start out so early. We practice for months and months before the season actually even starts. So we have to set goals for ourselves, whether it's weekly goals, daily goals, or season long goals. But you learn how to make achievable steps towards your goals. You learn how to do those things through playing sports, and football particularly.
Especially as a woman, in not only the corporate field, but on the football field, a lot of the times we are underestimated, and we're, pushed to the sides, and our opinions, we have to scream them louder in order for us to be heard above other voices. So, the confidence is definitely something that you need in this field, because if not, they'll kind of swallow you up and spit you out.
Absolutely. I have to throw in one more, because she said that. Yeah. Resiliency, perseverance, all of that translates from the football field. And additionally, as a woman, especially a woman in football, you have to overcome obstacles, you have to overcome challenges. And when you're hit with adversity, you got to be able to pick up and keep it going. Otherwise, you're going to be left behind.
So what would you say to any young girls who want to, join football and follow your footsteps?
All right, let you take that one, Lois.
I just, this is my passion. And like I said earlier, I was that little girl who was told no, and I didn't have the vision of a woman on the field to show me that no was not the final stop, that I could still achieve, or I could still aspire to be a football player. And I would say, just go for it. As long as you love what you're doing, as long as you have the interest and it's in your heart to do it, just do it. Doesn't matter what other people around you are saying, because everybody, at the end of the day, everybody's got something to say about whatever it is that you choose to do. So don't let other people's opinions affect your goals and your dreams. And then I would have to say, you got to become, it's Cook's 3 C's. All right. Let me give you Cook's 3 C's. You got to be confident. We just talked about that. You got to be coachable. You can't just go in there and expect to just be who you want to be, do what you want to do. You've got to let the coaches decide. Coaches can see your strengths and your weaknesses, so they'll put you in the best possible position. So you have to be flexible enough to take instruction and apply it. And then the last one is confident, coachable, and you've got to be committed to working hard. You cannot step on the field and expect things to happen. You have to get out there and put in the work every single day, or as much as possible, in order to, be successful at the sport.
For sure. I'll say this. I think it's super important that we show women and young girls that there can be balance, and that you can do all the things that you want to do, as well as things that you love. And I think it takes a special kind of woman to be able to play for no compensation, such a brutal sport, sacrifice your body when you still have to go to work, and you have to raise your children, and you have to tend to your house and your spouse. So I think female athletes really contend with a lot more, and so we really have to start building that type of mentality and that fortitude into young women from early on, because a lot of the time people in their lives are telling them you can't do everything, you can't do that, you can't go to school and have this and go to work, but you can. And just like we multitask on the field, and we might have our hands on one person and our eyes on another, we have to do that in our personal lives too, right? I know I have football practice on these nights, right? So that means I have to schedule my other things on other nights. I might have to grocery shop in the morning because I have practice in the afternoon, etc. And sometimes, Lois brings her kids, some of our other teammates, they bring their kids to practice, and we become aunties, right? We're all watching the kids, right? We do that because we understand that we don't have the luxury of, or some people do, of somebody being at home to watch your children and to keep your house together while you're out chasing your dreams.
I just love everything that you just said.
Yeah, me too.
And the biggest part of it, and it speaks to not only just young girls, but also women in general. It's okay to do both. It's okay. You can. If that's what you want to do, you can do it. You don't have to accept the no. Thank you.
No, that's a good point, because, have you seen more people come out or more popularity through the years of playing?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Our opening game this year, the stands were packed. There was standing room only. So that was like, that filled me up, and especially because we were able to win that game, it was like, it was just like an outpouring of love. And it shows a lot more people respect it now. It's not just like a vanity type of sport. They see that we're really in the trenches, we're really digging deep, we're dipping our shoulders, we're hitting hard, and they appreciate that, and they're cheering us on. A lot of the times you know, a lot of people think it's like intramural or something, and I have to explain to them, like, I'm a semi-professional athlete. You know, I take this very seriously. You know,
I don't
yes,
see semi
we're
in it.
now
We are
we're now,
professional.
yes, we're professional
Yeah.
athletes. And so I take it seriously. It's, to me, counts as another job, and I report to it. I do what I need to do to be prepared for it. And I take it, you know, when I get on that field, I know if I take it and go half, I'm going to be wholly hurt. You know, like I might put somebody
Right.
else in danger. So
Yeah, that's
I need to
exactly.
take it as serious as possible each and every time, practice included.
Yeah, and in terms of just the growth of the sport, I look at when I first started playing football, and I would be like just out and about talking to people, complete strangers, saying that I play football. Usually, the response back then was, "Oh, you mean soccer?" or "Oh, you mean flag football?" And then it turned into, "Oh, you mean lingerie football?" You know,
Lingerie,
and
yeah.
it evolved. But today, I might see somebody that I don't know and say, "I play football," and they'll say, "Oh my gosh, are you with the DC Divas?" Yo, I
Yeah.
was at a game
Yeah.
last, you know, it's so crazy. And I love that so much. And it's we are so deserving of the attention that we're receiving. We're starting to receive more and more attention now. And the ladies that have the women are who are out here putting in, like Kristen was saying, we are putting in the blood, the sweat, the tears, and investing our entire lives sometimes into this sport for a minimal return. And it means so much to us when we have positive feedback, positive, we're welcomed when people come to the stand. Like Kristen said, our first two games were completely sold out, you know, it's amazing. And to feel that energy, to have people there watching you and knowing that they're there to, maybe they know you, maybe they're family, but maybe they're not. Maybe they just love football. And that means everything, especially as an athlete who's out there putting their product on the field.
And I think women, I think male athletes probably take it, you know, for granted, because the support comes naturally. You know, we went to the first, you know, XFL game out here, 18,000 people in attendance, you know, wearing all of their gear, cheering for them so loudly as if they've been cheering for them their whole lives. It was the first game that team had ever played, you know, in public. And, you know, I think that, like, man, if we've been playing for 20 years, if we can get half of that, like, imagine the impact. But we have to work for it. Like, we have to work for every fan that comes in. We have to work for every piece of publication. We have to work and work and work, and we have to set ourselves apart. And so, like, you know, the same thing, you know, with women in the workplace, etc. A lot of the times we just have to work twice as hard, and we're like, let's do it.
We
Let's do
do.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and we do. And we work, I see it as we work three times as hard. Once we have to overcome the physical side of it, right? We came
Yeah.
into this sport as adults. We didn't have the luxury of having Pop Warner or middle school or high school to bring us into this sport. So we're learning this game. We're already our physical selves where we are. We're training our bodies physically to be an athlete, but also mentally, because we're learning the defensive schemes, offense, you know, what's a pulling guard do? Like all these different things, right? That go into the game that, you know, and we have a short amount of time to learn it all, but we're doing it. So these are mothers and aunts and daughters out here on this football field doing it. We're giving an amazing product the same way that the men are. But obviously we've started a lot later, but we're working twice as hard to get a little bit of the return.
Right.
So it just means
To
so much.
legitimize ourselves almost. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, you play football. That's nice. And you're like,
But we're the real deal. We're the real deal. And I think when people come out and they see us, they see that, and there's, you know, and that all you got to do is just look, open your eyes, go, come out and see a game. You'll see we've got the amazing elite plays out here. We've got high flying athletes. We got hard hits. You know, we're out here doing it.
So the last thing I want to ask is about you have a playoff game this weekend. So is there any rituals or superstitions you have during the playoffs, or is play different in the playoffs, or practicing? How is that?
I may have personal stuff, like I have to wear the same thing.
Yeah.
I do have, yeah, there's like, I feel funny when I don't have on like the same exact underwear, the same exact socks, like certain things. Honestly, like game day, I have to have things set the way that I'm used to them being set. Otherwise, I feel off. And you know, that there's a saying: if you look good, you feel good. You feel good, you do good. And I live by that. Like, so I don't know. I guess that kind of translates. I'll let Kristen jump in if you have personal things. But I was going to say also, as a team, you know, the biggest thing for us, I think, in the playoff season and coming into a championship is that we fully teach and implement that we play for the name on the front and not the name on the back. And sometimes in the past, and we'll probably do that, right? And what we'll do is we'll actually tape the names on our backs. We'll tape them so you can't even see who's who. And that just as a statement of that's who we are. We are divas. So it doesn't matter, you know, individually, it's who we are together.
For sure. You know, like Lois said, I'm a stickler. My bag has already been packed since last week. You know, like I can see it from here because I did the laundry and I said, okay, I need to make sure I have these specific socks, these specific undergarments. I have my jerseys are already, you know, obviously not this one, but you know, like they're both jerseys are in there. My correct pants are in there. All the other things I might need, but you know, before you know, because we're traveling this week, I have to make sure that my bag is packed to the fullest. You know, it has every single thing I think I could need. I pack extra things in case somebody else needs them. I have like 6 pairs of socks, you know, like stuff like that. Like I need that. I need to be able to sit and be alone. I need to take a nap. I need to eat, you know, like there's certain things I need to do. I need to make sure I have like 6 Gatorades in there. I never drink 6 Gatorades. It doesn't matter, just in case. What if that day I'm thirsty and I don't have a Gatorade, then what, you know? So it's like those types of things. You know, I usually keep my own on the sidelines, you know, like I just need to feel like I'm almost like I'm at home, right? I need to make Away feel like at home. And you know, like if you have to wear a different undergarment, I know, you know, I'm like, Lord, the day's going downhill already, you know, like I need everything to be just right so I feel comfortable. So yeah, and I don't know other people, but I never switch cleats during the season. You know, just because I'm like, I don't need my feet feeling different. I need my feet to feel the same the entire time. You know, I just need to feel at home in my own skin. So yeah. Oh, I have to also wear eyeliner.
I mean, me too.
Exactly.
I don't do eyeliner, but I have to. My lashes have to be right.
Yes, exactly. It's like I have to wear eyeliner with a little cat, so you know, I just feel like everybody else has like the blackout underneath. I'm like, okay, is my eyeliner good? Okay, good. But I do that because I think that the most like awesomely feminine thing is like to put all those things aside and like play football, mess somebody up, come off the field, still be yourself. You know, like I'm like I feel very fierce, if that makes sense. When I put on my jersey and my uniform and my pads and I hit somebody and I rock them, like I feel like the most feminine then, I think.
Yes.
It's like
So my first question is, what inspired you to, you know, basically dedicate your life to help kids?
You know, it was one of those things that happen when you're young and you don't realize it's an aha moment, but it sits in the back of your head somewhere. When I was in the military, had an experience once where I went into a hospital to visit a friend of mine who'd been injured, who was also in the service. And there were a bunch of little kids in the hospital, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds who were very sick. Some had been injured too. And I had taken a shortcut to visit my friend, found myself in the children's ward by accident, knew nothing about children in those days. I wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. I walked past one of the beds, which had a few kids on because there wasn't enough room. and a little boy put his arms up to me as I walked by, and I'm in my uniform, and I think I'm really this big deal soldier, you know, and this little chap couldn't have been more than 5 years old, very badly injured legs, reached up to me and he asked me to hold him. And I didn't know what to do. I looked around in a panic, and there were no adults in the room at the time. And he asked me again if I could please hold him, and something triggered very deep inside me, just this wash of empathy. And I took off my backpack, and I bent down and I picked up this little boy, and he put his arms around me and he just wouldn't let go. And he buried his little face right here in my neck, and he started to cry. And that little boy's tears ran down my cheek and my neck and into my shirt and touched my heart. And it was very profound, but I went off, did my thing, but kept on hearing that voice in the back of my head. And I was in advertising for a while, directing TV commercials. And then one day I just decided that I was really tired of trying to convince people to buy things they didn't need, and decided to listen to that call and started writing, creating children's books, children's material. And that's basically how it started 35 years ago about by now.
So what are some of the things that motivate you to continue to help kids grow?
I spend quite a lot of time visiting kids at hospitals. I'm very proud to have served on the board of the American Childhood Cancer Organization for a number of years. And just seeing kids who are struggling, and very few people even know about it. And that's what happened with the Comfort Crew. I started working with the USO, touring US military bases and talking to kids at schools. There are schools on our military bases overseas. And I just realized that on top of difficulties that normal kids have normally growing up, these kids had extra difficulties. Their parents were deployed. When their parents came back, things were different. Kids had to move every 3 years, and that's traumatic. You know, it's hard enough being a kid, but these thrown in. So I felt a very strong calling to try and see if we could help these kids manage their lives a little easier, just with a few tools and, you know, an understanding of what they're going through. And that's how we started. That's the seed that grew into the Comfort Crew.
So when I was researching the organization, I went on the website and I watched one of the videos, and one of the lines really struck me is, they don't choose to serve, but sacrifice so much. So how important is it to, you know, give these kids in military bases a voice to, you know they're not alone?
Yeah, well, I think it's very important because, you know, we have 2 million military kids in this country. And even though, you know, we've pulled back out of Afghanistan, our troops are being deployed all the time. You know, the Navy gets deployed every 6 months about, and they're gone for 6 months. We have people all over the world. And as the general public go about their business, they just don't realize how hard it is to be sitting at home and knowing that a parent is defending this country, our country, and these kids are carrying a lot of the weight. People always say to me, so why do you do this? Well, I'm an American by choice. And having met so many of these service members, it's so hard for them too to leave their kids behind. Anybody who has kids, even if they go on a business trip, it's difficult. So we feel that these kids need extra support, and that's why we're around. We want them to be able to become resilient, learn from the experience, and you know, not be left behind socially and emotionally.
So can you tell me a little bit about the programs and what you do for the organization?
Sure. So what we have we've developed kits. We have a grief kit, we have a deployment kit, a reintegration kit. We have a kit for kids whose parents may have visible or invisible injuries. And in these kits, we have journals with prompts. so kids can write down what they feel. There's in the deployment kit, there's postcards, and we explain to kids that there is something called the mail, that you can put something with a stamp on, which is kind of a nice, unique way for the kids to connect with their parents. There is a video in each one, an animated half-hour video, which deals with that particular topic, and we spent a lot of time creating those videos. And you know, an example of how this works is, I was at a school once, and all the kids got deployment kits. In the kit is the journal, and we urge them to write down what they're feeling. You know, research is showing that when you write down what you're feeling, it helps you to process it better than just thinking of the solution. And I always tell kids, I don't know how it works, but it really works. And I got an email a while after that, and a little girl said, "Dear Mr. Trevor, when you came to our school, you gave us deployment kits, and I wrote my feelings in my journal. When my daddy came back from being deployed, I showed him my journal, and my daddy started to cry. When my daddy started to cry, that's when I knew my daddy got his feelings back. And when my daddy got his feelings back, that's when I knew I got my daddy back." And simply writing down what she felt in a little journal brought that family together. And it's not rocket science. You know, there's just a few tips and tricks that we've known through experience over working with the kids over the last, you know, multiple years, that we have put into practice to help them with their daily military life.
So how important is it to just, as adults, listen to kids than, you know, tell them what to do, if you will?
Well, what we do as adults, we tell kids what we think they need to hear instead of listening to what they're asking for. And what do we do often? We say to kids, it's going to be okay. That doesn't fix what that little person is dealing with. What it does, it makes us feel like we've said something to comfort them. But what it does is it leaves them alone. It leaves them knowing that sometimes adults say it's going to be okay, but how do you know it's going to be okay? And so what I think is really important about listening to them is validating what they are feeling. Because oftentimes, knowing that somebody knows how you feel, without actually saying, I know how you feel, and I always say to parents, try and share an experience you've had that's similar, so that it lets the kids know that you've been in a similar situation, and it's not that you're trying to be an adult and say, okay, it's going to be okay, you're going to be fine. So we think it's really important to listen. And you know, there are some very simple ways to do that, and one of them is to, you know, sit one-on-one with a child and put your cell phone away, you know, or not have the TV on. You know, just very simple tips and tricks like that. Yeah.
So what are some of the things you've learned from these military kits?
Oh goodness, I've learned that if you are moving to a different place, find out about where you're going and turn it into an adventure. And that's actually what I did personally when I decided to move to Hawaii. You know, it sounds great. You move from the mainland to an island. What you know, it's still a nerve-wracking thing. So I found out about where I was going to live, what kind of things I could do in the area, how I could volunteer and make a difference where I was moving to. I learned that from a military kid who was helping other kids deal in a deployment camp that I went to, a deployment group for little kids. So that's one of the things. The other thing that I learned over time is that little by little, a little becomes a lot. You can't achieve something in a day. You can't learn to be a marathon runner in one day. You can't acquire all your friends in one day. You learn to love something little by little. And so little by little, it all becomes a lot. And that's something that I've sort of learned over the years with being with military kids. Yeah.
So when I was researching in your books and in your speeches, you use a lot of humor. And it makes a lot of sense. How important is humor to these kids' feelings?
To me, so an interesting fact, I am dyslexic and have struggled with ADD my whole life. And I had a dad who was just a very funny, humorous guy who helped me see the lighter side of some of the struggles I was having. And when I started creating books, I wrote a book called How to Do Homework Without Throwing Up. Another book called Bullies Are a Pain in the Brain. So using humor helps me to break the ice with many kids. Like if I visit a child in hospital who has cancer, the first thing I'll do is say something funny. And what I often tell parents is you can even have jokes that you have put aside in your little mental Rolodex, that if there is a real tough situation, to throw out a one-line joke, it neutralizes things. And laughter is the best medicine. And so often I've been in tense situations and say something absolutely ridiculous, and the children burst out laughing, and you're like, well, okay. Well, here's a perfect example. I was at a school the other day, and the kids did not want to have a lecture from some old dude. It was close to home time, and I got up there and I said, hey, listen, guys, I want to tell you something. Yeah, I struggled at school. I'm a little guy. I was very short at school. In fact, I was so short, I had to climb on a chair just to reach puberty. Those kids, they laughed so hard, and I had them. They didn't want to be there. They didn't want to sit on the floor and listen to me. But the minute I said that, oh my goodness, all eyes were on me, and the